I'm McKinney Smith. After going through a divorce, my sister passing away, experiencing narcissistic abuse, and some significant health scares, I realized through sharing my story that I wasn't alone in my suffering. Suffering, subjective distress generated by the experience of being out of balance. In a deep dive to holistically heal mind, body, and soul is where I discovered peace, clarity, and connection. It is impossible to be truly wise without some real-life hardship, and we cannot develop post-traumatic wisdom without making it through, and most importantly, through it together. Social connection builds resilience, and resilience helps create post-traumatic wisdom, and that wisdom leads to hope. Hope for you and others witnessing and participating in your healing, and hope for your community. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope because it has seen its own people weather, survive, and thrive. Thank you for joining us on the Heal Her podcast, HEAL. Honor, elevate, and love her podcast, formerly known as the Walk in My Stilettos podcast, the top 1.5% most popular show globally, where we have conversations with extraordinary women on their journey toward wholeness and harmony. And since you're already here, you may as well subscribe. As a certified mindset coach guiding women towards peace, clarity, and connection within, supporting the direction of the system toward wholeness, my goal here is to help you thrive. Amanda Kloots is a New York Times bestselling author, small business owner, content creator, and world traveler living in Paris. So many people have said she's the real-life Emily in Paris. Anna is the author of the Live Your Life, My Story of Loving and Losing Nick Cordero, which she co-wrote with her sister, television star Amanda Kloots. Anna's latest book is titled My Own Magic. Her writing candidly reflects on her travels, relationships, failures, and fantasies. Anna adds a little sparkle to everything she does, thinks outside the box, and prefers to dance down the streets instead of simply stroll. She can often be spotted sipping a glass of champagne in a cafe, undoubtedly celebrating something. In the last 12 years, she's lived in New York, London, and Paris, and traveled to 83 countries across 6 continents. And now, for every woman searching for her voice, Anna shares her story of starting over by trusting the magic that was always within. So please welcome to the show, Anna Kloots.
Thank you. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and share your journey with us and share more about the book and everything that you've, experienced along your healing journey. I don't take your time for granted, and I appreciate just the transparency that I know this conversation is going to have. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So before we get into where you are presently, I love to learn a little bit more about the backstory, because our childhood experiences, our childhood environments, our childhood wounds, all those things affect who we are today. So before society or, culture or any of those things limited your beliefs, I would love to know, what you wanted to be as a little girl and what your aspirations were.
I love that you said before society limited us. I was talking about true. When I was little, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I wanted to be a waitress. I used to play waitress in the house and walk around and get everybody snacks and foods and things. I was very much into writing and creating. So for a while, I would draw like my own fashion magazine where I would design these fashions that involved a lot of capes, which I now think is really cool because I was essentially making women into superheroes.
I love that.
Write the fake, advertisements and like other things that would be in a magazine. And these exist in my bin of childhood memories. So we're not too far off. I didn't end up on the complete opposite spectrum.
I love that. Okay, so tell us how that transitioned into who you are today. Share a little bit of your backstory and how you got to where you are presently.
Well, I went to school then for fashion. I wanted to go to school for writing, and it was kind of discouraged from the whole idea, as everyone says, you're never going to make any money being a writer. So that was society coming in saying like, you really shouldn't. Are you sure this is what you want to do? You want to struggle like that? So I went into fashion instead. Realized pretty quickly I didn't want to work in fashion. The reality of learning what that job was so different from what I thought it was going to be in my head. And so I left college with kind of the only knowledge of what I really loved doing was traveling, which I learned during my semester abroad in France. And I loved writing, which I also learned by starting a blog while I was on this semester abroad, just to keep my family and friends like up to date on what I was doing. So those two things kind of led to like, this is my passion and I know it. And this is what I know I want to do. And I just don't know how to make this into a job because it wasn't a job, it wasn't a job at all back then. This was 2009 when I was really like, I'm studying fashion. I don't want to do this. All I want to do is write and travel. And I mean, fast forward a couple years, I got offered a job in London when I graduated from college. It had nothing to do with anything I had studied. It was in sales, selling very expensive doorknobs and hinges and things that I knew, nothing about, but learned because the job was going to take me to London. So I lived there for a year. And then that's when I really fell in love with traveling and traveling alone. I came really empowered by what every kind of trip taught me about myself and about the world. And it was kind of like opening up the whole world to me. And then I came back to New York when that year was up and met, basically then, got more serious with my boyfriend at the time in New York and ended up getting married. He was a professional magician and I became a magician's assistant. So I've had a lot of career changes. And then with him, I started traveling full time, pretty much being his assistant, mostly off stage, not really on. So I was doing a lot of like the creative aspect, a lot of helping, very, very multifaceted career. And so I could kind of help with a lot of things. And then I basically started sharing on Instagram when Instagram was new and something I download pictures of our travel, and I started writing about it. And I'd been keeping blogs and journals the whole time. And I really fell in love with this idea of, writing about travel and sharing the magic of it. And the more I experienced and saw and grew and changed, I was like, this is something I want to share. I want this to be a book. And I was writing this, these stories and these blogs and taking these pictures one day, hoping it would all lead to a book. And my marriage kind of then came crashing down very suddenly. I was left without a job, a husband, and a home all on the same day. Wow. And that's when I was sort of like, well, what am I going to do, especially for work? And I thought, well, maybe I can make all these travel stories into a book. And it's when I met with my lit agent then she was the one who listened to the whole travel stories, but then also everything I had been through and gone through. And that was sort of how this book came to be. She was like, there's a lot more to this story than just the trips you took. And I was like, yeah, there is, isn't there? Yeah. And when I realized it had the potential to kind of, what I hope it will do is, inspire and help other people who are sort of at their lowest low believe that this is temporary. You will end up happier and better off and stronger. So that's really why I started writing it.
Wow. There is so much in what you said that there's so many points in there that I want to unpack. It's a lot. So much. Very large. So a couple of things. One, I've been divorced myself, so I totally get how that can be not only like a shock to your system, but kind of you having to recreate what your life is going to be or what it's going to be like. It's a complete shift in your identity. So my question to that part is what are some things that you've learned about yourself during or after the divorce? And I have so many questions. I'm like, okay, where do I want to start? Okay, we'll start there. You start
with that one. Yeah. So much. In a way, I really used, I felt very lost when my divorce happened because I had built my entire life and identity around this person that I met at 19. I was with for 10 years, married for 4 of them. And when that all came crashing down, I really didn't have an identity outside of that, because I had given up so much of my own passions, my own self, my own dreams for this other person and for what I thought was going to be our life together. So when I found myself back at the beginning, I almost didn't know where to even start, because I couldn't even remember what I wanted or who I was. And I felt very incapable. I felt like without him, my life was over, and like I couldn't do anything without him or be anything without him. And I then very, I guess pretty quickly started to realize, like, when you reflect, it's very normal to be in that state and just feel helpless. I started reflecting a lot on what my life was like before I met him, on a lot of the things that I had actually done on my own, even though it was within our relationship, like what I kind of gave someone else credit for, where maybe credit wasn't due, and I glazed over a lot of the things that were like actually pretty big wins or pretty big accomplishments, but I didn't give them the credit due. So I kind of like went back and like took tally, right? Like did like a quick stock check of like what skills I actually had in here and what actually made me great. And I really needed to do that at that point. And I think we all need to do that, like monthly. Just like let's take a quick tally of like why we're, what we're good at and what we deserve praise for and what we need to stop and be proud of. It's so easy to undervalue ourselves and to just, always be saying that we're not great and we're not this and we're not that. And when I took that little inventory, it just reminded me that like I was actually very capable. And I had done things before this relationship and I could do things after it. And all and what I had learned from this relationship, the experiences it gave me, both good and bad, gave me this whole new skill set that I now walked into this new life incredibly determined, incredibly strong, not willing to put up with anything that didn't serve me, and just like determined now to create a life that I really wanted instead of just a life I signed up for before I really knew what I wanted.
That's important right there. That last line of what you said, because I feel, and I know myself included, a lot of people that are in a marriage or long-term relationship where they lose themselves and forget all of their strengths and all of their own potential and their own magic because they're playing the supporting role in someone else's film. Mm-hmm. And when that ends, especially if it's unexpected, we feel lost until we sit and take that tally of what we are great at, what we actually want, what things we have and can accomplish. I know that when I was public about my experiences with after my divorce and that journey, there were so many people that were reaching out through, DMs on social and email asking for advice. And it's like, I don't have all the answers. This is just what I am learning in the process, on my own healing journey. So I guess like, what advice would you give to a woman listening about how to turn their unhappy ending into a chance for a new beginning?
One thing I get asked this question all the time too, and I have a similar response of like, first of all, there's no right way to do it. There's no guidebook. There's no, roadmap. It is so different for everyone. And it depends what exactly you've been through and what you have around you to help you heal. One thing I always say right away is like, just feel the pain that you feel. Don't try to tell yourself that you shouldn't. Don't try to invalidate it. Like, cry it out. I spent a long time just sobbing all day, every day. It's what I needed to do. I had spent too much time burying feelings and telling myself that I was okay when really I wasn't. So I always say, like, there is no shame in feeling something very bad just happened to you. Your world came crashing down. You've lost a person that you thought you were going to spend your life with. Mm-hmm. Cry it out if you need to. It's okay. So I always say that. And then I say, make a list of what your dreams are. And I did this sort of naturally. I started looking back and reading old journals, which is something I do a lot. And I found this old bucket list I had made. And this is in my book. I read this bucket list and I realized how much of it I'd done. And then I also realized that, my life looks a bit different now. My dreams are going to maybe be a bit different. And I start making a new bucket list. And as I'm writing down what I really want, the things like my biggest dreams, things I really want to do, I not only realized so many of them would have never been possible within the confines of my former relationship, but also now realized I have the power to do this. What's stopping me? What's stopping me from going and living these dreams? And that became insanely powerful because it, like, my dreams poured out of me, where I had felt like I don't even know what I want. But when I just actually really stopped and thought about it, I very quickly started writing down exactly what I wanted and what I wanted my life to look like. And then it kind of gave me direction of like, this is what I'm going for, because now I can. I no longer have to say, well, that doesn't work, or that's too expensive, or that's not possible, or that won't work with his schedule. It was just me. And I could go do all of these things. And that is a really amazing, I think, step one is just like, look at the possibilities ahead of you and start making a list of what you want your new life to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very easy, like I said before, to get lost in a relationship, a job, anything like that. And those steps of, making your bucket list and reevaluating those things. And those are some great tools for the women that are listening. I know that you spoke earlier about exploring different careers. You said you've experienced a lot of different careers. And anytime I've had so many women say this, and anytime it's said, it's almost said as like a disclaimer, like, don't judge me. But I find so much beauty in that, because there's a lot of people that will get into one career and they get comfortable and they stick to that career forever, no matter how unhappy they are. But you've given yourself the opportunity to explore, to express your creativity, to see where one thing can lead to a next. So you're basically, opening up the door for more opportunities that may not have existed had you stuck with, one thing or one career. And I also feel like many of us are, what's the word I'm looking for? I hate to say creatives, because I feel like at the end of the day, we're all creative. It's just how we apply our creativity. But I wanted to point that out, because I know there are women listening probably giving themselves flack for switching careers or feeling like they've moved around a lot. So I wanted to highlight what you said, because there's so much positive within that.
Oh, there's so much. I look at the moving around as actually like, if you can do that. I know some people end up staying in the same job because that they need that stability because of other things, other factors that they can't control. And so they're, almost stuck in a job. And so I've always felt like when you have any kind of freedom is a huge privilege. If you actually can say, I'm going to change jobs, I'm going to change careers completely. I'm going to pivot everything and go do this thing. Like, if you have that possibility, it's such a gift, because you do completely grow and change and learn totally new things as a result. It should not at all be like looked down on to do that. It's like we should constantly be reinventing and rediscovering ourselves. Like, we have a lot of life if you think about it. Like, I think it would actually drive me nuts to just do the same thing all the time and never, like, if I could, there's like 8 other careers I hope to have. Some of them, not so feasible. Like, I think I know my Disney princess cutoff has been made. Unfortunately, that was 30, so that dream is dead. But like there's an insane amount even now. Like, new jobs are being created every minute.
Yes.
So I say change your career as many times as you possibly can if you're so lucky to be able to do that.
Yes, I agree with you. I feel like majority of people have only tapped into 10% of their potential, because they are, I guess, whether it be based on circumstances or mindset or whatever it is, they're stuck in a situation. So I love that we've, spoken to just opening up yourself to exploring the new opportunities. What are some of the ways that you've learned to trust the magic within you, like being able to explore all those different things? I guess sometimes that may have come from our upbringing, what we saw. And if we didn't see that, or we wanted to be, so very different, or whatever the reasoning is, or whatever inspires it. But, how did you learn to trust that magic within?
I think a lot of it is somewhat like self-reflection, is like I said earlier, where we don't give ourselves enough credit, and it's easy to just glaze over the things we've accomplished. When I was sort of at my lowest point, you are just writing yourself off as, worthless. And my husband just left me and I don't have a job and my resume is insane. who's going to hire me. Like I'm so down on myself, and you're looking at everything through this negative lens, but you have to you basically have to just shift your perspective and reframe everything. It's not easy, but once you start doing it, then it's really easy to actually do. Like once you learn that skill, you can practice it in so many ways. I looked at this resume that was insane, and I was like, what company is ever going to hire me? And then I was like, actually, this resume is amazing. Like I've done weird stuff, and I've done it all over the world. And this is a little bit of sales experience, and I have experience in this and this and this. And I was like, in traveling is its own kind of education. Like if I spin it like that, it's this really cool, unique dream resume that actually makes me equipped for a ton of stuff. And so it's just that you have to look at what is really within you and appreciate it and really realize what you have done instead of just, dismissing everything. Like take note and give yourself props where it's due, and identify what your strengths are and identify what really makes you you. And to me, that's what your magic is. Like the things you can bring to the table that others can't. We all have these different strengths and these different skills. And, when you really harness that and own it, it becomes a superpower, and it can take you places. So that's what really trusting your magic is. You got to identify it and then own it and then trust it and use it.
You hit multiple nails on the head there, because naturally our brains are wired to focus on the negative, for many reasons, evolutionary survival instincts, our past experiences, cultural or societal influences. There's so many reasons, but we're wired to think of the negative first. But perspective is everything. When we shift our perspective of a situation, something I had learned from my mentor is even when something bad does happen, before, we freak out and react to this negative thing, take a second, pause, and think about what good can come from this. Because sometimes we're so focused on the bad situation that is happening, and then our minds go down this rabbit hole of all the negatives, worst case scenarios. We're basically tacking on piles of negative energy. But if we were to switch our perspective and even just try to look at the positive, we're switching how our brain processes that information. And the narrative that we're telling ourselves, our inner stories are, what do you call them? Well, that's just what it is. The stories that we're telling ourselves, because that's what matters, and there's a lot of us telling ourselves negative things about our story that, one, isn't true, and two, it's stories that we've kind of made up, or that doesn't have to have that ending per se.
But it's what we start to believe, because you tell yourself the same thing over and over and over again, and you start to believe it. And you have to stop and realize, I'm writing this book, I'm writing this narrative. I'm in control of how it goes. And I realized really early on that, I say it in my book, failure was essential to my story. I was not happy, but I was convincing myself that I was, and it was fine, and it was enough. And I really wanted to write a book, and I had been really wanting to write a book and full blaze with my own career, but it just wasn't ever going to work for me, because my husband's career required that same amount of attention and focus and everything. There couldn't be two people like that in that relationship. And he was there first, basically. So I had taken this supporting role. If that marriage hadn't failed, I would have never done anything I did. I would have never moved to France. I would have never it lit a fire under me, because suddenly I had to figure it out instead of just, letting someone else, call the shots and go along with it. Cause I was mostly happy. I now suddenly was we got to figure this out. You need a home, you need a job. I'm so grateful it happened, because otherwise I could see myself still being a magician's assistant and, playing a supporting role forever. And I don't think in the net that would have made me happy. Yeah. And I believe that door closed so that I could go live my dream. And that's what I certainly didn't feel like that in the moment, but my late brother-in-law said to me the day that that, the day this all went down and I was just sobbing in a mess. And before bed, he gave me a huge hug and he said, "Annie, best day ever." And I was like, "What?" What? But he saw then what I didn't yet, of like, this is actually going to be the best thing ever happened to you.
Yeah.
And it was in the weirdest way. It was the fire I needed lit to go wild. Exactly. Yeah. And we don't see that in ourselves, but other people see it. And that is kind of what we need to tune into. Like, no one else is really that worried about me. They're comforting me, they're consoling me, but no one looks as worried as I feel. And that's a bit of a wake-up call, because people always see the best in you where we tend to see the worst in ourselves. So like, that's a good point of like, when you're at your lowest, check in with the people who are really your people. And chances are they're going to be like, "You got this. You're fine." It's not lack of empathy or sympathy, but it's just that like, they know you, they know you're going to rise.
Yeah.
And so try to see yourself through those eyes. And maybe that will help you realize like, okay, I do got this. It's going to be hard for a while, but I got this. I'm going to come out of this stronger.
Yeah. Wow. The last part there, when you were talking about what your late brother-in-law said, I started to get emotional. I'm like, okay, this is not going to be one of those episodes where I'm going to cry. I'm going to hold together.
Okay, I can these days. I think it's helping.
I'll explain why after, but there was 4 things that you said that I wanted to highlight. One, when you were talking about we tell ourselves something often enough, we start to believe it. Like, that's how our subconscious mind works. That's our feeling mind. And it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. So whatever you continue to feed it, it takes that as reality. So we need to be very mindful of what we tell ourselves. I think sometimes we underestimate the damage that we also do to ourselves, the added stress that we give ourselves by what we tell ourselves. And then you spoke about that both you and your husband had dreams, but he was there first. And at the end of the day, what we focus on grows, like where the energy is, that's what grows. And you were investing a lot of time into focusing on his dreams and goals because they were there before yours. It's not that yours were not there.
I hadn't really identified them yet.
Yeah, exactly. And then you spoke about travel and I guess changing environments and how that benefited you. So I want to come back to that point. But then the 4th thing was when you were talking about your healthy connections that are around you and when you were at your lowest, how they were, where they didn't seem as worried. And it's not that, they didn't have empathy. I wanted to speak to that because I think sometimes there's a fine line where people confuse things. So someone else in your situation could have said they're doing toxic positivity or they're not listening to my feelings or whatever. It's not that they weren't listening to your feelings. They were, but they, like you said, can see something in you that when you're at your lowest, you can't see in yourself. And when you have healthy connections around you and you have a healthy community around you, part of them uplifting you is reminding you of those strengths and reminding you of how great you are at moments that you forgot that. So those are the 4 things from what you said that I wanted to go back and highlight in case anyone who was listening missed that.
Yeah, that last one is particularly important. And if you're ever, I've not only gone through things myself, but then everyone is going to be in a place where you are put in the support role of someone you love is struggling, and how do you help them? And I can tell you, at least for me, and I know a lot of other people will say this, no one wants to be looked at like this.
Yeah. Poor me, the victim. Yeah.
Well, how are you doing? Like, you're not doing good. And the last thing you want is someone looking at you like you are this sad, pathetic thing. And it's our natural instinct because it would seem rude to just be smiling and happy. But it actually is what, at least me, when I'm down, like, it's what I need. I need someone to just treat me normally, to be positive, to be smiling. Again, these real loving relationships, like, of course, that person knows what's going on. It's not a lack of empathy, but when you're treating someone like you poor piece of, crumbled paper. Like all you want is to feel good and normal and whole. And so it's a huge thing that network supporting you and reminding you that you're awesome and you got this, and being smiling instead of being like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is just, how are you? we gotta remind people that like, that's not the good move. It just makes you feel like,
yeah, it's like too much of anything is not good. So, when you have the people who are doing the toxic positivity and they're ignoring that you're actually hurting, that's not good. And when you have people on the complete flip side where they're making you feel like you've invited them to a pity party that you didn't invite them to, that's also bad. So it's like learning to play the middle role of having empathy, acknowledging that it sucks right now, but reminding that person of their greatness and giving them hope of what's to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it helps you do it, it reflects, like it helps them do that themselves.
Yeah. Agreed. So I remember pre-pandemic, I used to travel every month, and traveling was like so therapeutic for me. And I know that when I went through my last major breakup, a big thing for me was changing the environment in order for me to heal. I didn't want to be in the same space. And you mentioned traveling quite a bit. So I would love to know, how has traveling transformed you?
It has transformed me in every single way. From those first couple trips, it just showed me that I was capable of being on my own and taking care of myself. I'm the baby of 5. So I kind of always grew up with people doing everything for me, and always being doted on and cared for. And suddenly to be like off on my own, and, I was in Rome the first time I traveled alone, and I was like lost, missed my train, 19 years old, didn't have a working cell phone. And I survived, and then I remember that night being like, I got this. And it was very empowering. So it taught me that. It showed me so many things I was passionate about that I would have otherwise never known. It made me fall in love with history. It made me fall in love with art. So many things that I just wasn't exposed to as a child or never really cared about. But, when you put yourself in situations that you're learning something new or experiencing something new, you can realize like, I had no idea, but I love this. So it showed me that. And it basically just opened my world enormously to not only possibilities, but also just to new everything. My favorite places are the places I kind of feel the most out of my element, where like nothing is like home. And I remember like the first time I went to Japan, the first time I went to India, I was just like, this is crazy. Like, I love this. I would have, you would have otherwise never experienced anything like that unless you go to those places. So it showed me a lot of just differences that were really key to appreciating things about my upbringing, questioning things about my upbringing, giving me the ability to like really form my own opinions about a lot of things based on experiences rather than just on what I had been told or a certain narrative that I had learned. I see it all the time, and it just recently with the protests in Paris, to be here in Paris experiencing that versus what I assume was being reported. Calls I was getting from people, saying that, are you okay? The whole city's on fire. And that's not the reality at all. So it's very important to me to continue doing that and to have done as much of it, because it challenges you to look at things, absorb things, and form your opinions about things.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. I think it's important that you spoke to that, because sometimes people will see something on the news because the news is there to feed the negative. So their perception versus reality is very different. Also, when anyone is in the public eye, whether you're a public figure or influencer or, author, any of those things, people will typically have some form of misconception about you, whether they see your life on Instagram and they, create their own narrative and totally, admire anything and like everything and just assume there's nothing bad in there, no struggles, or the opposite, where they see that, and because of their own insecurities, they envy or, have any, I guess, negative views about your life. What are some misconceptions that people have about you?
I've gotten a lot of interesting misconceptions, down to what my job is even. A lot of people don't fully understand that I basically have 4 full-time jobs that I'm doing all the time. I was sharing the other day about how I kind of reached a breaking point because I try to always show the negative aspects in the real life, and that it's not just all happy and smiling all the time. I had a huge breakdown the other day and shared it, and someone said it. They said, I mean this respectfully, but how could your life be that complicated as an influencer? And can't you choose your own hours? And I was like, okay.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Do you know what my job is? I have 4 jobs. I don't even consider, I don't list influencer among them. I have a small business that I run. I do freelance content creation for a bunch of brands and work in advertising and marketing strategies. I'm an author, and I have my own, small business in guides I'm creating and content I'm constantly in materials I'm creating for my own brand. I have hours that, I guess I can choose, but also I'm the only one working for me. I'm the only one making money for me. So I work all the time. I never sleep. I don't know when it's the weekend because the weekend means nothing to me. It's interesting that the conception of, especially an influencer, a digital creator, anything is oh, wow, easiest job ever. And it's so I want there to be a reality show about it or a docuseries so people actually understand, at least the people I know work their butts off and not any more. I'm not saying anyone works harder than anyone else, but don't consider it this, easy life job that you choose your own hours. You're not actually doing anything. It is nonstop work. Everything work. What looks
24/7.
Exactly. Even, you might think I'm just having a fun week in London. I've been working every minute of that day. So that's a common one that that my job isn't difficult or demanding, or people don't fully understand what it is that I do. People think my parents pay for my life, or I've had people think my sister pays for my life. Been on my own since I was, my dad, it's in my book. My dad, the day we graduated college, he was like, better find a job because, you're done. And what an incredible gift to get a college education from my parent. But then I was like, I gotta find a job. Next month's rent is on me. And I work insanely hard to be able to provide for myself. And, that's a very common misconception. Yeah, I think those are the 2 I get the most, which the thing is about all of these things is when you're, you have to be so, when you know yourself, you don't let it bother you really. And you don't feel the need to lash out at anybody or correct them. Cause you're just if you would, that's how I feel is if that's how you enjoy spending your time, if that's worth your time to you to create this entire negative narrative about what my life is and how I've arrived here and how my time is spent, I'm too busy living that life in the reality to worry about what you think or try to, get into a DM war. I have better things to do. I'm hustling. I'm busy. If I have a spare 5 minutes, I'm going to call my mom. I'm not going to fight with a stranger on the internet. Yeah. So, there's no way to avoid that, to avoid these misconceptions and the negativity you sometimes get. But you have to just be so rock solid in yourself and remember, this person doesn't know me. They don't know my heart. They don't know my intentions. They're not here. They don't see what's going on. And if that is truly what they want to spend their time and energy doing, then they're clearly not someone who is on my level of we're not in the same headspace. Exactly. Yeah. And so I don't even need to be worried about what this person is thinking. All I need to be focused on is me.
Yeah. And I think it's very important that you said that, because I find anyone who is a new entrepreneur always wants to ask me that question. How do you deal with, your family or your friends, their perception of what it is that you do and all those things. And it's at the end of the day, their perception is based on their beliefs, their past experiences, their history, their traumas, all of those things. And people will often project their insecurities or, negative viewpoints on other people. And if you are sharing your life online, like I've been self-employed for almost 15 years now, so I get it. So when you're sharing your life online, because people think in pictures, they will look at one picture and create their own narrative of your life based on a picture or a couple pictures. They will create their own story of who they believe you are, what they believe your values are. It doesn't mean that it's actual fact. So it's great that you've pointed out, like, any free time that you do have, you're going to take that energy and invest it in the people that love you and appreciate you and support you than the negative trolls online who are basically using that as a tool to, I guess, express their own hurt and their own issues.
Yeah, I truly think every time there's any kind of negative thing, and I tell this to friends who get negative stuff, I just think, like, if someone is using their time that way, like, you should instantly just be not concerned with what they think about you. Because for me, like, what a poor way to use your time.
Yeah.
To actively use your time to try to bring someone else down, to try to, like, make someone cry or make someone upset or, make someone question what they're doing. Like, why is that ever worth your own time? You have to just focus on goodness, like focus on yourself and focus on goodness. So I always just, like, I learned that on my own a long time ago. And it's a message I always try to share. Like, you just keep doing you. You'd be too busy to care. You'd be too solid in who you are to let the opinion of a stranger ever make you question for a second your own growth or what you're doing, or if it's the right move. Just keep doing you.
Yeah, agreed. 1000%. My thing is, if they don't have my phone number and can call me personally, they know nothing about me. Nothing. You can assume what you want versus what what you see online or what you read or hear in a podcast. But if you don't have my phone number and I'm not sharing my personal life with you on a regular basis, you know nothing about me.
No, absolutely not. And, I think when you talk about healing, like, the beautiful thing about going through something really difficult, because there's always silver linings, is when you really decide, like, I want to heal from this, and you start taking steps toward it, I feel like it becomes addictive. It's like, you start to learn a little bit about yourself. You start to dig into the trauma, dig into the grief, and you're willing to address these things that I think a lot of these people who do lash out and spend their time being nasty to people, I think it's because they don't actually want to spend the time working on themselves.
Great.
So rather pick apart others. I'd rather spend that time working on myself.
Yeah.
And being in a really tough place kind of forces you to start. And once you start getting to know yourself and working on yourself and healing yourself, and then you see the growth and you see what it does and you see how it changes your life, you're like, you're never done, right? Like, there's never like, oh, healed, you're like, oh, what else can I do? What else can I try? What else can I learn? Because how few of us actually deeply know ourselves. And it should be everyone's top priority. Like, get to know yourself inside out the way that you want to get to know the person who, you fall in love with, and you just want to know everything about them, their history, what they love, what they hate. Like, we have to do that same thing to ourselves.
Yes.
And a lot of it is hard and tricky. There's things you're going to have to accept that you don't like. There's truths that you've never faced. There's things you've never said or admitted. But when you start doing that, it is life-changing.
Yeah.
And there's not a part of me that wants to spend a second picking apart somebody else. Like, I'd much rather do work on myself. And that's where my focus is.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said, 1000%. I got obsessed with personal development when I was going through my divorce in 2009. And then that's when I actually started on that journey. And through, I guess, my obsession, the energy, the focus, the manifestation of it all, I ended up connecting with Bob Proctor. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was one of the thought leaders featured in the documentary, The Secret. And I ended up doing his coaching program. I got mentored by him, his wife, his daughter, got certified through their company. And then I went through a traumatic breakup in 2019, 10 years after my divorce. Yeah. And then through that became even more obsessed with like deeper healing and understanding energy and the uncomfortableness of healing and that obsession of self-awareness and self-mastery. And that's why I said I can totally agree with everything you said, because a lot of people are out here so focused on other people, so focused on what people are doing that they don't even know that they don't know themselves. The pandemic forced a lot of people into isolation to get to know themselves, and they didn't like what they saw. And, you have people struggling with mental health and all kinds of issues. But if we were to invest that same amount of time getting to know ourselves, getting to understand how we process things, how we heal, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, we would actually improve every relationship around us, and the ripple effect would be unbelievable.
Enormously. But I think it's a lot easier to pick somebody else apart, especially when you're hiding behind a screen and you don't have to ever face that person. I mean, that is so easy, like low hanging fruit, instead of doing the hard work, because it is not easy to work on yourself. Yeah. But instead of doing the hard work, you can just pick people apart and tell yourself that makes you feel better about who you are. Compare yourself to somebody, make this fake narrative, rip them apart, and you're so much better, and you're so much less, you're so much more real, or you're so much, just do the work on yourself. Like, it's such an interesting, it's actually such a reflection on who that person is that is tearing the people apart far more than it is the actual person they're criticizing.
Absolutely. I think I'm actually going to title this episode, Learning How to Trust Your Own Magic Within. Because I feel like, a lot of people are so focused on other people and other people's lives and other people's Instagrams and narratives and accomplishments. And it's all about our own inner magic, our own potential, our own self-awareness and self-mastery.
Yeah. And to drop that comparison, to not be, to not constantly be comparing ourselves. That's so dangerous, because what makes someone else happy is not necessarily going to make you happy.
Right.
Not everyone's brand of joy is move to a country where no one and start over. I understand, like that did it for me. That was my dream, but I can't promise you that's what's going to make you happy. Everyone has to do their own, figure out what it is for them that is going to unlock that joy, that freedom, that magic. And you can't just copy someone else's format.
Agreed.
It's not work for you. And you also can't even, look at something and say, oh, that's the definition of perfect, because how often is what you see the reality?
Exactly. And so you can't look at someone else's life like goals. No.
The expert is what you see, and then like everything underneath it is what someone's hiding, or just the moments that aren't captured.
Absolutely agree. So before we go to the final segment, I would love if you could tell the listeners where they could stay connected with you to learn more from you and about you.
My Instagram, I update every day. I recently joined TikTok, though I admit I still don't really know what I'm doing on there, but it's been a fun venture. My website has, AmandaKloots.com has all sorts of stuff and links on it. And of course the book, which comes out on the 16th. A very, very real, raw, account of 10 years of my life. So that's a great way to get to know me.
Awesome. So I will definitely have all your links in the detailed section below the episode, so they can just click and connect with you directly.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the final segment is kind of like a rapid fire, just a couple of quick reflection questions. You can answer one word or one sentence. I don't like to be put into a box, so if you feel that you need to expand, you are free to do so.
Okay.
All right. What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I put the radio on.
Okay.
Abba.
Okay. What's the last thing you do at night before you go to bed?
Usually, honestly, emails. I fall asleep with my phone in my hand, unfortunately. Emails are responding to DMs, trying to get through DMs.
Okay. What advice would you give your future self? Not your younger self, but your future self.
I guess I'd say, like, don't be afraid to reinvent everything again, change careers, move cities. Like, I don't like being too comfortable.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Okay. If you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would that be?
Be nice. Simple, but yeah, just be nice.
Love it. Okay. When and where are you the happiest?
When I'm with my family. And all 7 of us are together. It doesn't matter where, but when I'm with my family, it's.
Okay. What's one thing you forgive yourself for?
I forgive myself for losing myself because we got back. But yeah.
Okay. And last but not least, what do you wish women would do more of?
Tell themselves they're great. They're awesome. Look in the mirror and say good things instead of bad things. No more picking yourself apart. Just even if you can just do one a day, just when you go in the mirror, instead of instantly finding some flaw, just direct compliment.
Yeah.
Start with a compliment.
I love that. I love that. Because unfortunately, I know too many women that cannot look themselves in the mirror for too long. You know, something as simple as staring themselves in the eye in the mirror for a minute long, you know, they're in tears. They don't have positive things to say about themselves. So I 1000% agree with you that, you know, look in the mirror and tell yourself something positive, even one thing a day, until you can not only allow that to seep into your subconscious and believe it, but until you can, you know, increase that and feel way better about yourself. Because I feel like there's too many of us women that don't feel great about ourselves, but we're on this healing journey together. So thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome. I so enjoyed talking with you. I'm so thankful you have me on.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate you. And, you know, I want everyone to go out and purchase the book and follow you on your website and read your blogs, you know, and to all of you healers out there, until next time, subscribe on all platforms. Don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We want to hear what part of Anna's story resonated with you. Feel free to screenshot this week's episode and you can tag Anna at Anna Kloots, and you can tag myself at The Real McKinney Smith. And I want to thank each and every one of you that continues to listen each week to help the show rank globally in the top 1.5% of most popular podcasts out there. That's over 3 million podcasts. So to me, that's a big deal. Thank you. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope because it has seen its own people weather, survive, and thrive. So let's continue to heal her.